Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a stack of sources that, well, they really map out the fundamentals for anyone managing global supply chains. We're zeroing in on ethical sourcing, compliance, and the legal bits that hold it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think of it like, the essential knowledge base for those senior strategic roles in global procurement.
It really is that bedrock knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're handling complex supplier relationships, huge regulatory demands,
Yeah.
you just have to know these core definitions, these legal frameworks, inside out.
Yeah.
They basically set the boundaries for where the business can even operate and how far the risks really go.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to pull out the most critical insights across sort of three main areas.
Right.
First, the ethical and sustainable mindset, especially ESG.
Okay.
Second, how we actually turn that into practice with suppliers and manage risk day to day.
The operational side, yeah.
And finally, the contract law essentials that, well, make sure everyone sticks to the rules.
The enforcement piece.
Exactly. So let's jump straight to those foundational concepts that matter most.
All right. So to talk about ethical supply chains, you really have to start with corporate social responsibility, CSR. And the key framework here, the classic one, is Carroll's CSR pyramid. We need to look right at the bottom, the base.
Right. I think most people, when they hear CSR, they might immediately picture the top. The ethical stuff, maybe the philanthropy.
Outcoming, yeah.
But our sources really hammer home that the whole thing rests on something much more, well, practical.
Exactly. The most fundamental requirement, the absolute starting point before a business can even think about ethics or giving back.
Is
Economic responsibility. Simple as that. A company must be profitable.
Yeah.
Financially stable first.
That does bring up a potentially tricky point, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if prioritizing profit is the foundation, the necessary base, does that sometimes lead to short-term choices that might actually undermine the ethical goals you eventually hope to reach?
That's the constant tension, isn't it? It's the reality check. Economic viability is necessary for sustained ethical action.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. If a supplier is just struggling to survive, just to keep the lights on,
Yeah.
they're going to be far more tempted, maybe even forced, to cut corners, maybe on legal stuff like labor laws, or definitely the ethical considerations.
So without that solid financial ground.
Everything else is shaky.
Mm.
It risks becoming just, well, wishful thinking.
Okay, so assuming we have that economic stability in place, how does sustainability then become a practical business model? Our sources point to a pretty big shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh.
There's a huge push away from the old way, the
Yeah.
linear take, make, dispose model.
Right.
That's just not sustainable.
Right.
The focus now is squarely on the circular economy.
And what's the key difference there? Because it's not just about recycling, is it? That feels like end of pipe.
Not at all. And that's such a critical insight. Recycling is often the last option you want. The circular economy is much more holistic. It's really a design philosophy. It's built on three core ideas. First, actively designing out waste and pollution from the very beginning.
Proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Second, keeping products and materials in use for as long as possible, refurbishment, sharing models, that kind of thing. And third, this is crucial, actively regenerating natural systems.
Yeah.
It's about protecting capital, both natural and material, not just managing waste.
That sounds like a powerful ethical goal, but it's also increasingly becoming law, isn't it?
It is.
We see this very clearly with things like mandated transparency, specifically the modern slavery acts you find in places like the UK or Australia.
Yes, and it's fascinating how these acts are sometimes misunderstood.
How so?
Well, people often think their main job is to, say, ban imports from dodgy regions. That can happen, but it's more of an enforcement tool.
Yeah.
The core purpose of these specific laws is actually different. It's to mandate that large organizations publicly report
Report on what exactly?
on the specific, verifiable steps they've taken to prevent slavery and human trafficking.
Yeah.
Not just in their own operations, but deep within their supply chains. They're complex, multi-level supply chains.
So it's accountability through visibility.
Right.
Force companies to say what they're doing or not doing.
Precisely. That public disclosure is a powerful driver for change.
And speaking accountability, on a global level, we have the International Labor Organization, the ILO, setting fundamental standards.
Absolutely fundamental.
For anyone listening who deals with global sourcing, knowing these basic human rights principles is just non-negotiables, right?
Completely.
So what are the core areas? the 4 pillars covered by those 8 ILO conventions.
Okay, these are the absolute minimum standards. Every nation adhering to the conventions must enforce them. They cover freedom of association, the right to unionize and bargain collectively,
Right.
the elimination of all forms of forced or compulsory labor,
Crucial.
the effective abolition of child labor,
Yes.
and the elimination of discrimination in respect of employment and occupation. Got it. Those 4.
Yeah, those are the core 4.
And it's important, I guess, when you're vetting suppliers, not to mix these up with, say, local benefits or perks.
That's a really key distinction.
For instance, the ILO sets these fundamental rights, but it doesn't dictate something super specific like guaranteeing everyone gets 4 weeks paid vacation.
Exactly. That kind of specific benefit, while important in many places, falls outside these core universal human rights principles defined by the ILO. You need to know the difference.
Okay, so we've laid the ethical and legal groundwork for how supply chains should behave. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of everyday procurement. How do these big ideas actually play out in supplier interactions and managing risk?
Right. And the first thing is you deal with so many suppliers, you just can't treat them all the same way.
Makes sense.
Their strategic importance, their risk profile, that dictates the relationship. So we need to define the most basic type first, the transactional relationship. Okay, what are the dead giveaways? How do you know it's transactional versus something more collaborative?
It really boils down to the focus.
Yeah.
Is it short-term or long-term?
Okay.
A transactional relationship is almost purely driven by price, competitive pricing, and short-term contracts. The focus is super tight on efficiency, maybe cost-cutting, just getting what you need right now.
And what's missing?
What's missing is the long view. There's little long-term commitment, usually no real mutual risk sharing, not much deep information exchange, definitely no joint value creation. You just buy the thing.
Right. Transactional. Buy and fly.
Pretty much.
And that lack of shared risk you mentioned, that's exactly why having your own risk management sharp is so vital.
Absolutely.
If that simple transactional deal falls apart or, some big global event hits your whole network, you need a quick way to assess the damage.
You do.
So, for that initial stage, assessing and prioritizing potential disruptions, what's the go-to tool?
The essential starting point, the first pass, is usually the risk matrix, or sometimes called a heat map.
Ah, the grid.
Exactly. It's incredibly simple, but really effective. You just visually plot potential risks.
Based on
2 things. How likely is it to happen? And what's the potential impact if it does happen?
Likelihood and impact.
Yep. That picture instantly shows you where the big dangers are, the high impact, high likelihood ones. So you know where to focus your resources first.
Makes perfect sense. Triage for risk.
You got it.
Now, let's connect back to the ethics piece for a second. It's not just about external risks, but also managing the risks inside our own team's decisions.
Critical point.
Our sources really stress getting the definition right for what compromises someone's integrity in procurement.
Yes, this is absolutely fundamental for maintaining trust, both internally and with market. We're talking about conflict of interest.
Okay, define that clearly. When does it actually arise?
It arises when a professional's personal interests, and that could be money, family ties, even just owing someone a big favor, when those personal interests could improperly influence how they do their job, specifically how they make a purchasing decision or exercise their official duties.
So the key word there is could. It's not necessarily about proving they took a bribe or consciously showed favoritism.
Exactly. That's the crucial part. The problem is the potential for improper influence. Even if, technically, the final decision seems okay on paper, the mere existence of that conflict just taints the whole process. It undermines the perception of fairness and transparency.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a buyer awarding a huge contract to a company owned by, say, their spouse or sibling.
Okay.
Even if they genuinely believe they chose the best supplier based on merit, the potential for bias is undeniable. The integrity of that decision is compromised from the outset in the eyes of others. Defining those risks, managing relationships, it's all vital. But, when push comes to shove, if a risk actually happens or there's a fundamental disagreement, it's the legal framework that ultimately dictates what happens next, how you resolve things. So, connecting back to the big picture, all these day-to-day operations relying entirely on solid contract law.
Right. Let's start right at the beginning of any contract, forming the agreement. That moment of truth when an offer is legally accepted, with email and instant communication now, Has the rule on when acceptance happens become clearer?
It really has firmed up, yes. Under general contract law, especially now, the acceptance is legally effective when the offeror receives and acknowledges the offeree's communication of acceptance.
Receives and acknowledges. Both.
Generally, yes. The key is establishing clear mutual consent. They know you've accepted.
That's a big change from the old days, right? The famous postal rule.
Oh, completely different. Yeah, the postal rule was, acceptance is valid the moment you drop the letter in the mailbox, can cause all sorts of issues.
Okay.
The modern standard requires proof that the other party actually got it. They received your yes. That reception and acknowledgement are key for a binding deal today.
Okay, clear enough. Now, what if something totally unexpected happens after we've signed that binding agreement?
Like what?
Like, say you've contracted to buy unique parts made only in one specific factory, and then bang, a massive earthquake completely destroys that factory, makes delivery physically impossible.
Ah, okay. That scenario triggers a specific legal doctrine. Frustration.
Frustration. Okay, what does that mean legally?
It's the term used when an unforeseen event happens after the contract is signed, something outside either party's control, totally unexpected.
Right.
And that event makes performing the contract impossible, or radically different from what everyone originally agreed to. The whole basis of the contract is gone.
So, if the contract is fundamentally impossible to perform, what's the legal outcome? Does someone get sued?
No, typically not. The contract is automatically terminated by law, wiped out, and importantly, without either party being at fault.
Okay, automatically terminated.
Yeah, and it's important to distinguish this from, say, a force majeure clause.
How's it different?
Force majeure is something you usually write into the contract beforehand. It covers specific listed events like strikes or bad weather, and it usually just suspends performance temporarily. It doesn't kill the contract.
Ah, I see.
Frustration is a common law principle that applies when the unforeseen event makes the whole point of the contract impossible. So the contract itself just ceases to exist.
Got it. Okay, and finally, conflicts do happen, disputes arise, and nobody really wants the expense and time of a full-blown court battle.
Definitely not, especially in international business.
So we turn to ADR, alternative dispute resolution. Arbitration seems key in global procurement contracts.
It's hugely preferred, yes.
Yeah.
Especially across borders.
What's the defining feature of arbitration compared to, say, mediation?
The key difference is the outcome. In arbitration, the decision is made by an independent, neutral third party, the arbitrator, or sometimes a panel. And crucially, that decision is generally legally binding.
Legally binding, that's the critical piece.
Absolutely. It gives you a resolution that has teeth, that holds up legally.
So it's quicker, usually more private than court.
Yep.
But the result still carries the force of law.
Exactly. Best of both worlds in many situations.
We hope this deep dive has given you some solid foundations to build on.
Indeed. And we look forward to diving into the next stack of sources with you soon.